Is faith a choice? Can you just decide to believe and through pure force of will, make it real? For most of my life, I've been a skeptic. God, a higher power, the universe. It all felt like wishful thinking. But then I got obsessed with a question. What if my reality is just a story my brain is telling itself? And if it is, can I write a new one? So, I ran an experiment for 30 days. I tried to think my way into believing in God. I wanted to see if my mind alone could change my entire world. This is what happened when I tried to will God into existence. First, I had to define the rules. How do you even try to believe? It's not like flipping a switch. Philosophers have been wrestling with this for centuries. You've probably heard of the famous ontological argument from Anselm of Canterbury, a being than which no greater can be conceived. And that being must exist in reality because real is always greater than imaginary. It's a neat logical trick, but for me, it always felt like a mental puzzle, not a real path to faith. So, I decided to make my experiment less philosophical and more psychological. It had to be something I could feel. I took inspiration from Blaise Pascal, who basically said, if you want to believe, you should act like you already do. With that in mind, I created a protocol. For 30 days, I committed to 3 daily practices. First, 15 minutes of focused meditation every morning, but not just clearing my mind. I actively focused my thoughts on the idea of a benevolent higher power, a conscious force in the universe. Second, 30 minutes a day reading theological and spiritual texts from different traditions, Christianity, Stoicism, Hinduism, you name it. The goal wasn't to pick a religion, but to soak my brain in the language and ideas of belief to see if it would stick. Third, and the hardest rule, I had to practice what anthropologist Tanya Luhrmann calls kindling the presence. This meant actively interpreting events of my day through a faith frame. A weird coincidence couldn't just be coincidence. A sudden moment of insight wasn't just a random thought. I asked myself, is this a sign? Is something trying to communicate with me? My hypothesis was simple. I was a skeptic, pretty sure I'd end the 30 days as the same old skeptic. But I was open to the idea that by systematically changing my thoughts, I might trigger some kind of psychological shift. I didn't really expect to find God. To be blunt, the first week felt completely absurd. Sitting in silence, trying to focus on a higher power, felt like talking to a brick wall. My brain, a machine built on logic and evidence, fought me every step of the way. During meditation, my inner monologue was just relentless. This is stupid. You're just talking to yourself. There's nothing there. I felt foolish, like a kid playing make-believe. There's a term for this, cognitive dissonance. It's the mental chaos we feel when our beliefs and actions don't align. Here I was, a non-believer, going through the motions of a believer, and my brain was in open revolt. By day 10, I hit a wall. The effort was exhausting. Instead of feeling more peaceful, I felt more anxious. The pressure to find meaning in everything was creating a constant, low-grade stress. A car cutting me off wasn't just an annoyance. It was now a potential lesson from the universe that I was failing to understand. It was mental gymnastics, and I was losing. I wrote in my journal on day 12, I'm not finding God, I'm just finding new ways to be anxious. My own mind has become the antagonist in this story. It's a fortress of skepticism, and I'm outside throwing pebbles at the walls. I was ready to quit. The whole thing felt like a failure. And then, on day 17, something shifted. It wasn't a booming voice from the heavens or some miraculous vision. It was much, much quieter. During my morning meditation, I was so tired from the internal fight that I just gave up. I stopped trying to find a higher power. I just sat. And in that quiet moment of surrender, a thought floated into my head, clear as day. You're looking for God outside of yourself, as something separate. What if it's not? Later that day, I was walking through a park. I saw a little kid fall and scrape his knee. His mother rushed over, scooped him up, and held him, murmuring comforting words. It was a totally ordinary, everyday scene. But my brain, filtered through the lens of my experiment, did something new. It didn't just see a mother and child, it saw a physical example of compassion. It connected that small, real-world act to the big abstract ideas of love and empathy I'd been reading about. It wasn't a message from the universe, it was a pattern in the universe. My brain, which had spent 2 weeks desperately hunting for evidence, finally stopped looking for an external agent and started recognizing an internal principle. The feeling wasn't about discovering a God, it was about seeing a connection that had been there all along. It was a subtle but profound shift. My mind wasn't finding God, but it was starting to rewire its own operating system. The last 2 weeks were completely different. The struggle was gone, replaced by a feeling of genuine curiosity. When I hit the 30-day mark, I sat down to figure out what had actually changed. It all boiled down to 3 key things. Discovery 1. My reality started to feel more fluid. Our brains are pattern detection machines. We're biologically wired to see faces in clouds and find meaning in random noise. For 2 weeks I fought that instinct, but once I let myself see the connections, the world started feeling less random. This is at the heart of what Tanya Luhrmann calls real making, the process where practices like prayer can make the supernatural start to feel real. Some studies suggest that religious thought can activate the same parts of our brain we use for social interaction, essentially letting the brain form a relationship with something that isn't physically there. I didn't start believing a deity was sending me signs, but I did start to see that my focused attention could change how I experience reality. My brain was learning to tell a different, more interconnected story. Discovery 2. I became more compassionate, and the world seemed to respond in kind. The texts I was reading all hammered on the same ideas: compassion, forgiveness, gratitude. By meditating on these concepts, I was essentially running a 30-day cognitive behavioral therapy course on myself. Research suggests that practices like prayer can strengthen neural circuits for empathy and help manage negative emotions like anger. I found myself getting less irritated in traffic, being more patient, and giving people the benefit of the doubt. This is in line with studies on positive religious coping, which links a secure relationship with a benevolent God to better mental health. I didn't have a relationship with God, but by acting as if I were accountable to a compassionate higher power, I actually became more compassionate myself. And the world seemed to reflect that right back at me. People were kinder, interactions were smoother. I was creating a positive feedback loop. Discovery 3. I didn't find God, but I found a profound sense of connection. The experiment seemed to quiet the part of my parietal lobe that governs the sense of self, something some brain scans suggest can happen during deep meditation and prayer. This blurring of the self led to moments where I felt connected to something much larger. It wasn't an old man in the sky, but it was a powerful feeling of oneness. Many studies show that spiritual involvement is linked to a huge range of health benefits, from lower rates of depression to a longer life expectancy. I think this feeling of connection is a huge reason why. We are social creatures, and that feeling of belonging, whether to a community or to the universe itself, is profoundly good for us. So, can you think your way into God's existence? After 30 days, I think that's the wrong question. I didn't will God into existence like I first imagined. I didn't solve Anselm's argument or have some divine revelation. But I did prove to myself that by intensely focusing my mind, I could fundamentally change my experience of reality. The brain isn't just a passive receiver of information, it's the active creator of the world we live in. I went into this as a skeptic, and in many ways, I still am. I don't believe in a personal God who intervenes in our lives, but I no longer see the universe as a cold, random machine. I see it as a web of connection, a system of patterns and principles that my own consciousness is a part of. I didn't find a God out there, but I did uncover a powerful, transformative force inside my own mind. I learned that belief isn't just a conclusion you reach, it's a practice you commit to. It's the lens you choose to look through. And when you change that lens, the world really does change with it. Maybe that's what people mean by faith, not the certainty that God exists, but the willingness to live as if He does, and in doing so, becoming a better version of yourself. What do you think? Have you ever had an experience that your rational mind couldn't easily explain? Share your story in the comments below.